Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our session for advice from alumni on specifically why host moms role in the spirit of Mother's Day being last weekend. We really wanted to chat about host moms while abroad. My name is Ali Badair. I am a director of campus partnerships here at ISA, and I am super excited to be with all of you today. I actually studied abroad in Peru when I was a student with ISA in Cusco, Peru. I don't know if you can see, I have lots of alpacas behind me, but that's why. And I studied abroad and lived with a host family. My host mom, her name was Esperanza. She's absolutely amazing. She's still a host mom in Cusco. So if you want to study abroad with Cusco or in Cusco with ISA, you might just get to meet Esperanza. And today we are going to be hearing from some of our other program alumni who have their cameras on here on why their host moms made their experiences abroad the best. So with that, sorry, I have my notes up in front of me too. Do y'all want to go ahead and introduce yourselves very briefly, Tatiana, Jake, and Kaya, and then we'll actually jump into the presentation?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Tatiana and I studied abroad in Costa Rica for 35 days. My host mom was that lady in the blue shirt, and her name was Mama Tika, which is what I called her by. I studied Costa Rican healthcare, tropical medicine. I also studied Spanish for healthcare professionals, and it was just an overall amazing time. I'm excited for your trips to go study abroad.
Hi everyone, my name is Jake and I am featured in that photo to the lower section of the slide, and that was my host family celebrating a birthday, and that was very good experience. I studied abroad in Spain, and it was great being able to live with a large family, especially with children that were my age too.
Hi everyone, I'm Kaya. I studied abroad in Meknes, Morocco in the fall of 2021. And I'm in that top right corner with my host mom and my housemates. I was there for 3 months, and we learned a lot about like international relations. We took Arabic classes, learned a lot about Islamic societies, culture, and it was a great experience.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. I'm going to give a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about today, but I also just want to mention that if at any point you have questions or anything about anything that's mentioned, go ahead and throw them in the chat and we'll be, looking at those as we go. So today we're going to go over, how to choose a program, what are host families and why should you stay with one, and where should you study abroad? How did you pick a location and how do homestays factor into that? And then we're going to shift gears a little bit and we are going to hear from our alumni, from Tatiana, from Jake, from Kaya, on how to, what their experience was like, and then how to connect with them and other program alumni too, to hear about different experiences. And then finally a Q&A session at the end. So like I said, throw your questions in the chat at any point and we'll address them closer to the end of the program. But with that, let's go ahead and shift into the actual presentation. So here are host families, some things to consider if you are considering living with a host family or having a host mom in the spirit of this particular presentation. Are you looking to live on campus or in an apartment or with a host family? Here at ISA, we have a lot of different housing options. You can live in a dorm, you can live in a student apartment with others, or with a host family. Of course, today we're focusing on host families, but just knowing that you have options is really important. And I firmly think that one of these options is the perfect fit for you. It's just going to be assessing which one is the perfect fit. So then dreaming of authentic home-cooked cuisine. One of the highlights of living in a host family is that a lot of your meals are actually covered in the program. And so you get to eat truly authentic food cooked by the host family. I know that the 3 students or alumni on the screen are so excited to tell you about all the great food that they ate, because I just hear all the time that food is one of the best parts of a homestay. And then, are you searching for community within your university overseas as well? I think that study abroad is always what you make of it, right? And if you want to get embedded in the local community, right, and really get close to many locals, a host family is a really easy way to do that. That way you're not just surrounded by other students studying abroad all the time. So with that, let's go ahead and flip slides. Awesome. So location. So when you're deciding where you want to go abroad, what are some things that you should consider? Do you have a destination in mind, or, are you set on, I need to go to Spain, or are you open to other options? What type of experience are you looking for? And then, are you looking to speak another language outside of English? I talk to students all the time who some are really set on a certain location. They're like, for the Spain example, I've always wanted to go to Spain. I have to go to Spain. Or, my family is from Ireland and I want to experience that. There's also a lot of students who really pick locations based off of your major. That's a really smart way to pick a location, right? Is to pick a location that's going to fit your major really well and fit the type of courses that you're looking for. And then also language. Are you studying a language? Are you looking to be immersed in another language? I will just make a small plug here that in any ISA location, you can take classes in English. You do not have to speak another location, but you will absolutely pick up bits of another language, even if you're trying to only speak English. But if you are studying another language, studying abroad is a perfect way to strengthen that language, especially when you're living with a host family, because you're going to be hearing it day in and day out with that family. Awesome. So now the advice from alumni. You can hear from current students studying abroad or recently returned alumni from any of our destinations by visiting our blogs. The links are going to be put in the chat for you, so you can access that at any time. There are written blogs, video blogs, where you can really see what our current students and recently past students are experiencing, and that is the best way to get information because it's firsthand. But then if you want to connect directly with one of our alumni, including today's panelists who you still see on our screen, you can fill out the form that we're going to be dropping in the chat. The bit.ly link is also on your screen. And we will put you in touch with either one of these 3 wonderful alum who are on our screen now, or someone else who is in a really similar program to what you're interested in. So I don't see those in the chat just yet, but they'll be there. Oh, there you are. Perfect timing. So you can click those links in the chat as well. Awesome. And so let's meet our alum. I know y'all have already introduced yourself, but maybe if y'all could one by one unmute yourself and just go around and tell all of us, what value did staying in a host family or staying with a host family and having a host mom, add to your experience abroad? And if y'all could share that, then we can jump into the Q&A afterwards.
Yeah, so I knew right off the bat, hey, I want to stay with the host family because I'm one to get super homesick, and staying with the host family would be like, having a family that you could come home to at the end of the day, and just being able to have a host mom to talk to about how my day went, and just having that comfort of feeling secure in a loving environment.
Kyle or Jake, what about you? Let's go.
I decided to stay with the host family mostly for the language immersion. I was very much wanting to both take classes and then also be able to learn Spanish, especially living with native speakers, be able to really understand from their perspective. I didn't want to feel like I was separated from kind of being able to really be within the culture and communicating with those that lived in Spain. And I think that it was just very rewarding to be able to have a process, to have a program that could give me that.
I think the biggest thing I learned from staying with a host family was just like more about myself and how I can handle situations because I was really nervous going in. 'Cause I'm very introverted. I've never been out of the country before, never stayed with someone I've never like known before. So I had a lot of nervousness going in. I didn't know if I could handle it. But being with the host family, I learned about a lot about how I can handle like being out of my comfort zone and taking more risks and having more new experiences. So that was something I learned about myself that I didn't know I could do.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you all for sharing that. I know I can give some insight for me for this too, because like I said, I also lived with a host family. And when I was in high school, we actually hosted a student who was studying in the US. And so I really wanted to experience that abroad as well. And feel like I was part of a family because I had experienced being the host family before. But with that, I think the main exciting point of this webinar is to hear from you three, right? And so we really want to leave the bulk of this time to have Q&A with y'all to hear about your experience. You've already started sharing, but I do have some questions queued up for any of you that are on the call. If you have questions a hot question that you just really want answered, throw it in the chat and we will make sure to cover it too. But with that, let's go ahead. So we're going to start off strong here. One of my favorite questions to ask is, how strict was your host mom? Were they more strict than your family at home? Did you have a lot of freedom while you were abroad? So if one of you could speak to that, or maybe two of you, if y'all had a different experience.
My host mom was not necessarily very strict, but I think one of the important things that I learned from the start of it was very much respecting the space that the host family has. And I was definitely, that was one of the first things that I wanted to make sure that I did, especially when I was going around like in the kitchen, making sure that I put things where they're supposed to be set. And I think that it's definitely building that sort of relationship of trust with someone that I definitely think really values and kind of is able to kind of create a better communication, especially even when I was learning Spanish there too. So even like if there was a language barrier, I think that by showing my host family that I was very respecting of their space and like cleaning up after myself, I think that was putting my best step forward.
Kaya or Tatiana, did y'all have a different experience?
Yeah, so my experience with my host mom, she wasn't strict at all. She really didn't care like what time I came home. The main thing with a host mom, definitely keep that communication. So if you're going to be gone for the weekend, or if you're just going to come home like super late, like just having that communication, quick text, hey, won't be home for dinner, or like, hey, going to the beach for the weekend. And also the only way that she was strict, I would say, would be with COVID. So just keeping that like proper hand hygiene, definitely she had like hand sanitizer bottles around the house. She had like a bunch of Lysol. And I feel like the only reason why she was strict with COVID is because Costa Rica hasn't hit herd immunity, because the vaccines aren't really that tangible yet over there. So, her being an older lady, she was just more concerned about her health and the health of the family. So
that's a good point. Okay, you look like you wanted to say something a minute ago.
Yeah, I just want to mention, like, I think me and my roommates, we were more strict on ourselves than they were on us, because we knew we were coming into um, a place that was different culturally than America, very different. So we were kind of cautious. We wanted to show them just how appreciative we were and how respectful we were of them. So we were always like making sure that we were being respectful, even if they weren't asking us to. So we had a little bit more strictness for ourselves. So we always helped clean and cook running groceries, just showing them like, oh, what can we do? How can we help you? What can we do for you? But it was never fun. It was always fun. It never felt like a chore. We were just being a family, and so it was great.
That's a great point, Kaya. And it's worth mentioning that if you are staying in a homestay, you will almost guaranteed be with another student from the ISA program that's there with you. And it truly does become like a family, right? With both the family and the host family themselves, but also the other student or students who you're living with too. Which any one of you that want to answer this, what is something that your host mom taught you while you were there?
Yeah, so one thing my host mom taught me, I was in Costa Rica, but I do have family from Nicaragua. And, the main dish with the two countries is gallo pinto, which is just rice and beans. So I told her, hey, I really never learned how to make it. And one night she just was like, hey, come out of your room. I'm gonna show you how to make it right now. And I thought, that was just, it was a really nice gesture that she did for me, for sure.
That's awesome. I love gallo pinto.
Kind of similar to Tatiana, I went to Spain because I wanted to learn more about the culture of my mom's side of the family, and they were from the sort of region around Bilbao. And I think that my host mom was just like very interested in wanting to get me to understand more about that side of my culture. I remember it was like 2 weeks into living there, and she gives me like this 600-page book. And she's like, well, if you have any questions, like if there's something that you don't understand, like please ask me. But this is like a book that's like very important to the history of our culture. And I was like, oh great, that's perfect. And I think that it just showed the care that the host family wants to invest in kind of the reasons that you're there too.
Awesome. I know for me, language was such a big part. Like that's where I really learned so much of the language day to day. And I still remember, because my Spanish was not good when I got to Peru. I still remember the day that my host mom sat me down and she was like, your Spanish is good now. And I wanted to cry. I was like, I've made it. Because Esperanza thinks my Spanish is good. Yeah. So let's see. One of the next questions is, tell me about a time that your host mom or just host family in general really supported you while you were there.
For me, I think just the fact that they were willing to like open up their homes to us and let us become part of their family just felt so supportive. Like, felt like they were always there looking out for us. Um, so just them letting strangers into their lives was just, it felt like the ultimate support. Like, I just felt so loved. Um, and not even just when we were at home, but like if we ever took trips on our own, they always made sure we had like, I know my host mom, she always cooked us so much food that we could bring in like our bags, and we were like, this is way too much food, we're never going to eat all this, but we always did because she just knew we were going to need it. So she always anticipated our needs.
Yeah, I know one time when I arrived to Costa Rica, this was like one of the first days I was there. I ended up getting this huge allergic reaction all over my body, and my whole body turned like red and inflamed. And I think I was just like having a reaction to the pollen there because it was like during the rainy season, and I was so miserable. I was so itchy. And my host mom went to the pharmacy and got me some 10-day like medications for me. And I always thought like, oh, like that was so cute that she did that. And yeah, it was definitely like a caring gesture.
That's awesome. Yeah, I also got really sick in Peru at one point, and she worked with the on-site staff there to like get a doctor to come visit the house so that I didn't even have to like go to the doctor. I didn't even know that they did house visits anymore, but yeah, it was amazing. Okay, the question that everyone wants to know, and I think y'all are most excited to talk about, is the food, right? So tell me what your favorite, I'd love to hear this from all three of you because it's a fun question, but what was your favorite family meal that you had there? And did you learn to cook it at all? Or did you just have it?
This one is hard because there's just way too many things to think about. I think that it was very funny how they had like a tradition of, I think it was on Monday or Tuesday nights, kind of the start of the week. Um, there are many weeks that they would have like some American food too, and be interesting to kind of see like the way that they would kind of put their twist on American food. And I thought that that was interesting. But speaking about the actual food that originally is popular to eat in Spain, one of the things that I was very surprised about is just how popular the seafood is. And one of my favorite things was these empanadillas de atún, which are just like these empanadas with tuna in them.
Yeah.
And I loved them. They were great. That was like the one thing that I never would have thought of. I think just kind of embracing like something, and I think like I didn't even know there was tuna in it until I like took a bite, but I think like that was kind of the fun thing about it.
That's so fun. That's a funny point you made, Jake, because I definitely remember my host mom telling me I asked for chicken nuggets too often. She was like, you need to eat Peruvian food, quit asking for chicken nuggets. And I was like, okay, fair. But, and I know Tatiana, you already touched on this a little bit, but what would you or Kaya like to add?
Yeah, so my roommate with my host family, she was pescatarian. So oftentimes I would just eat a bunch of like pescatarian dishes. Personally, I'm not, but hey, I love seafood. One of my favorite dishes by far was she made like fried fish on top of gallo pinto, and then like this like lime salted salad with cut up tomatoes, cucumbers. Yeah, so good, so good.
Wow. What about you, Kaya?
Um, I could go on and on for hours about the food my host mom cooked. She was amazing. But there's this one really special dish that in Morocco they only make on like really special occasions because it's like a whole day affair because it takes so long to make and so like the recipe is so intricate. So I remember one day we had all the students come over to our apartment and she taught us how to make it. So we were there like the whole day doing all the steps. Um, and it's called pastilla. So it's just this huge like round pastry that's like this thick and just filled with like chicken and almonds. It's a kind of like sweet and savory. But just the whole process of cooking it was just so tiring, but so rewarding. So then when we all ate it, it was just amazing.
I love that. And I really like, especially when we're talking about food, all three of you were in such different regions of the world with Central America, Spain, and Morocco. And so I think you all have really interesting perspectives. I am going to make a small plug here to everyone watching that host families are truly they really help on the cost of the program a lot because a lot of your food is covered in the program price. In some locations, it's 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, and some it's 2 meals a day, 5 days a week. But that saves you on a lot of just spending money out and about. Of course, you totally want to eat like out at a restaurant sometimes, but that's my small plug there. If you are looking to stay cost conscious while abroad, a host family is a great way to accomplish that. Okay, let's see. I'm looking at my questions now. We've touched on language a little bit. Did all of your host families speak English, or did they only speak Spanish or Arabic or French?
My host family, they spoke a couple words of English, but by and large, it was mostly for translation. Like I would look something up on Google Translate or Word Reference, and I would say it in English, and then they would say it back to me, just like for them to learn. But they definitely took to heart like the fact that it was a very immersive experience. And to be honest, my host mom, I don't remember her saying even like one full sentence in English, I'll be honest.
Yeah, same here. My host mom didn't know any English at all, but my roommate, she didn't know any Spanish at all. So she was actually really, really, really patient with my roommate in regards of trying to help her learn Spanish. she would like grab like an object and like be like tomato in Spanish, or like my roommate will just also kind of lean on me a little bit and say, hey, how do I say this to her? And I wouldn't talk to my host mom for my roommate. Rather, I just tell her how to say it and then she'd say it to her. So that way, you know, she was getting the most out of learning the language.
Yeah, same for me as well. My host family, they spoke a little bit of English, but not enough to get by. So I mostly communicated with them in French. So I knew a little bit of French before, and they know French, Arabic. Um, so we mostly communicate that way. We also used a lot of expressive gestures and hand motions to get our point across, and we always ended up being able to communicate, even if we didn't know the words. But we also taught each other things. Like I would always hear her doing Duolingo English in her room, doing her lessons, and we were doing Arabic lessons with our Duolingo. So we always communicated well.
Yeah. Yeah. And to anybody watching, if you don't speak another language, please don't be intimidated by that with living with a host family. As everyone on here said, all of the host families are super patient with that. Tatiana mentioned her roommate who didn't speak Spanish. I was totally that roommate who had to rely on my roommates abroad, and you get by with Google Translate on your phone, or something like that. I will say I had a host sister in my family who she had taken some English classes, and so she was kind of able to help with certain words a little bit back and forth, because we had actually, like, Peruvian Spanish was different than what we had learned in school here in the US, just a little bit, and so there were still some words that even my roommate, who was pretty fluent, didn't know. But definitely don't be intimidated by that. Yeah, okay, awesome. Let's see. What was, if one or two of you want to tell me, what was a really like funny story that happened with your host mom while you were abroad?
I think I can mention something along with like learning the language. We learning Arabic is very difficult because you're learning a whole nother alphabet. There's a lot of hard pronunciation. So that was like our biggest stressor. We were always like, just studying Arabic, the language. So our host mom, she was always trying to help us. So one day, she gave us like a stack of post-it notes. And she was like, just write your Arabic word and place it on whatever, like furniture, door, kitchen, window. And then she took one and put it on her head and she's like, Majda. And we were just dying laughing. It was so funny.
That's awesome.
One day I was walking around after school in the city of San Jose with my friends, and we were just going shopping, just, you know, strolling. And all of a sudden I like I'm like staring at this lady. I'm like, wow, she really looks like my host mom. And I'm just so casually walking. And then my friend taps my shoulder and she's like, dude, that's your host mom. And I'm like, what? And then I was like, what are you doing here? This is crazy. What a coincidence. It was, yeah, that was probably like a super funny moment.
I would have to say it's definitely a cross between just kind of like the jokes that will come with learning the language and saying something that is definitely not what you're supposed to be saying, or confusing different words. I think that is a classic in the Spanish language, and that's part of the reasons that I love the language. And I would just say that a culmination of all of that, all of those sort of jokes with learning the language, was my favorite part.
Yeah. Awesome. What was something that, surprised you about, or that surprised you while you were living with your host family, something that you didn't expect going into it?
So one thing that definitely surprised me was my host family lived in a complex.
Mm-hmm.
It basically looks like an apartment complex. But when I walked in, she was like, yeah, by the way, my son lives in the unit above us. My daughter lives in the unit next to us. And then we also have a vacant unit behind us for whenever my grandchildren live here. And I was like, aw. The way that they set it up was that when her and her husband were younger, they bought the whole place because they already knew that they wanted to settle down there. And have, the rest of the family live there eventually with them. And I just thought that was crazy because, like, in America, you don't do that. Like, I mean, like some people might, but I don't know. I don't buy a house, like buy multiple houses for, my future family. But, it's a cultural thing. I thought that was super cool.
Kaya, what about you?
I think for me, I was going in, I was really expecting like I was never gonna have any alone time. I never feel like I had my own private space. But they were really understanding about giving us our time alone, not like breathing down our necks all the time. And so I felt like I had a space where I could just be alone when I needed it, and I really appreciated that.
I also need my alone time, so that's a very good point. Jake, anything for you?
I would say that it was always just like the perfect combination of being able to socialize and communicate with the family, and then also being able to kind of have that alone time too. There was many times that I would just kind of be like exploring the city. I actually arrived early by about 4 days, and I remember I just like the freedom that I was able to just kind of roam around the city and be able to um, really kind of like have that guidance from them too, like know like immediately where like the cool spots to visit.
Awesome. Awesome. Oh no, I lost my questions. Oh, here they are. Okay, awesome. Yes. So here, Tatiana, you mentioned earlier studying abroad during COVID. And so I also wanted to ask y'all, for those of you who did study abroad during COVID, but you might have lived in a country where physical touch was super important. I think we always tell students that, especially like in Latin America, Spain, I honestly don't know about Morocco. Kaya, maybe you can educate me here. But kissing on the cheek or hugs are really, really a big part of culture. Did your host family still do this with you all? Or how did they or you navigate that part of the culture while you were abroad?
Yeah, so in Spanish culture, it's super common for you to like give someone a hug and then like a kiss on the cheek, but like that. And my host family, talking about being super strict with COVID and whatnot, we never really like physically touched each other and like hugged each other like that, which I respected, but I definitely was a little, sad because I'm definitely a affectionate person. But the way I navigated it was just by, reminding myself, like, if I ever did have COVID, like, I would like hate the idea of like giving it to them. And, that's the way that they saw it and the way that, I saw it as well.
This one was definitely the most interesting part of going to Spain, because in Spain it's definitely a tradition to kiss on the cheek. And as a society, that is one of the things that's been really kind of turned on its head through the pandemic. And I would say that the most important thing that I kind of took in mind is that if I was sick, that I would definitely take those precautions, that I would always make sure to get like tested. That whenever I was hanging out with maybe family that would come over that was older, usually they would kind of like tell me like, oh, like our parents are going to be gonna have like a dinner, I think like in a couple weeks, and they're saying like, yeah, let us know if you want to come. And I remember there was one dinner I went to, and I took some precautions, and I didn't go out to like really busy places. And I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it comes back to the communication with the host family and kind of their comfortability.
Awesome. How was it getting like integrated into the local community? Did your host family, did you find it helpful that you lived with a host family in making friends with locals? How was making friends while you were abroad?
I think for me, my host family definitely helped. They would take us out sometimes to dinner, show us around the city a little bit. But also just I say our program director. They set up a lot of meetings with like local students at the university and like the English language association. So we met with students there, and I met a lot of great people. So there was always opportunities to make friends.
Awesome. And I'm going to start to wrap us up just a little bit. There's one more question that I just really want to ask each of you. And that was, at what point in your study abroad process did you feel like you really had that like it moment or that aha moment where you're like, wow, I am here doing this and I'm living my best life and I've made it? When did you have that, or did you have that?
I would say that the culture shock that comes with it is definitely kind of like an up and down sort of roller coaster. I think that right when I arrived is like where kind of like all of that comes to a climax,
Yeah.
and then you really kind of develop into it. I would say like it almost kind of came back like near the end though, because I felt so comfortable. I felt like I really adapted well. So I think that that was kind of my experience.
For me, it was when I realized that I wasn't afraid to walk as a pedestrian in the city anymore. I remember when I first got there, I had no idea how the road system worked. Like they didn't have many like stoplights, street lights. So it was always just kind of go. Once I realized like I felt confident walking in the city, I was like, wow, I'm here, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So my aha moment was when I went to this museum about like Indigenous Central Americans. And I was just like walking through the museum, and it would basically show you throughout the lifestyle that they had, like their religion. And like, I thought it was super cool. And the whole time when I was walking through, I was like, wow, because I did Ancestry, and it said like majority of my DNA came from like the indigenous tribes and whatnot. And the whole time walking through the museum, I was just like in shock and disbelief because, I like, it's crazy because I know Spanish, I can speak Spanish. I know like some cultures about, just living in Nicaragua and whatnot, but it's like I wasn't taught anything about the indigenous ancestors of mine. And I just thought that that was like my aha moment because it was super cool. And it was like definitely gave me more identity of myself, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's a really good point. I definitely feel like study abroad makes you evaluate your identity while you're abroad. For me, mine was honestly really similar to Kaya's. I remember one time getting really annoyed with the tourists in the city. I was like, they just don't know what they're doing, and where are they? And I was like, oh my gosh, do I not feel like a tourist anymore? Because I was them just a couple weeks ago. So that's anyways, I'm rambling now. But with that, I want to thank all three of you so much for joining this and for talking about your time abroad and sharing your experiences. I think it was really inspiring to listen to, and I hope that everyone listening in also felt super inspired and is ready to go abroad too. And so, yes, definitely follow the links in the chat to be able to connect with Tatiana, Kaya, Jake, or other alum who want to talk about their experience too. But thank you three so much for joining today. And I also just, not that our host moms are watching this, but I want to give a huge thank you to all of our host moms who host our students and have for many years in a lot of cases, and for just being great moms, and happy belated Mother's Day to them. So with that, we'll go ahead and call it a day. Thank you all.